Always remember, your focus determines your reality.
In time, you will learn to trust your feelings. Then you will be invincible.
The greatest teacher, failure is.
Peace is a lie. There is only passion.
May the Force be with us all.
I am not Jedi, nor Sith. I have walked with light and burned within shadow. I have watched empires rise on promises and fall by their own hands. My name is lost to time, but in these echoes I am called Jalen Tross, holder of tales, keeper of memory, guardian of what was and what was never meant to be. These are not holocrons, they are Kybercrons. They hold no allegiance. Their duty is not to sway, but to preserve. The Force moves in cycles, and some names, no matter how buried, will always return. Our first tale is of a warrior who became a legend, a name that split the galaxy, and a mask that concealed far more than a face. Let us begin with Revan. Chapter 1. The Iron Face of War. Among the Mandalorians, there is a creed older than most civilizations in the galaxy, a creed etched in Beskar and blood. The helmet is the soul. To remove it is to remove the name, the bloodline, the honor of the warrior beneath. The helmet is not mere protection. It is identity. It is legacy. It is a sacred vessel passed from father to child, from mentor to foundling, through generations of battle and bloodshed. To wear it is to carry the weight of countless ancestors, to carry their hopes, their rage, their pride. And to lose it, or worse, to see it worn by another, is to risk losing everything. The Mandalorian helmet is a declaration, a promise, a shield for the soul as much as the skin. The Beskar is said to protect not just from blasters and blades, but from the cruelty of fate itself. To see an outsider wear that helmet, a Jedi of all people, is a wound deeper than any physical scar. It is a violation. During the brutal conflict known as the Mandalorian Wars, a war that ripped through the Outer Rim and threatened to shatter the Republic, this violation took place. The Jedi Council, cautious and divided, refused to intervene. But one Jedi could not stand by. His name was Revan. Revan was unlike any Jedi the galaxy had seen. He was a warrior and a scholar, a leader and a rebel. He was the kind of man who did not just challenge orders, he reshaped destiny. The Mandalorian Wars raged with fury. Entire worlds burned under the advance of Mandalorian crusaders, driven by a fierce warrior code and a thirst for conquest. Revan, leading a band of rogue Jedi and Republic forces, pushed back with equal ferocity. And it was on the world of Cathar, amidst the ruins of war and echoes of genocide, that Revan's fate intertwined with that of a Mandalorian warrior whose name is lost to time, but whose helmet would speak through the centuries. She was said to be a fierce commander, a female warlord whose tactics left entire systems in ruin. Some legends say she fought to protect her people in her own way. Others say she was a ruthless killer. Perhaps she was both. When she fell, her helmet, battered, bloodied, crimson with the scars of countless battles, lay on the ground. Revan did not hesitate. He claimed that helmet. The act was more than symbolic. It was a declaration of war on tradition itself. To the Mandalorians, the helmet is the essence of their being. An outsider claiming it is a theft of spirit, a sacrilege. Mandalorian elders speak in hushed tones of the helmet as a sacred bond, broken when it is taken, broken when it is worn by the unworthy. And yet, Revan wore it. He wore it into battle, into legend. He transformed the helmet from a mark of Mandalorian pride into the emblem of his rebellion. The Jedi Council watched in horror. To them, Revan was losing himself, slipping away beneath the mask, pulled by shadows of power beyond their control. But to Revan's followers, Jedi and soldiers alike, the helmet was a beacon. It erased the man beneath and forged a legend. The helmet became Revan, and the galaxy whispered a new name. Not just Jedi, not just warrior, but something more. A legend born of steel and shadow. The Battle of Cathar was a tempest, a storm of fire, steel, and shattered lives. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of blaster fire. The ground trembled beneath the march of armor-clad warriors, their war cries echoing across the bloodied plains. Among them moved the Mandalorian commander, fierce, unyielding, a whirlwind of death in crimson and black Beskar. Her every strike was precise, ruthless, cutting down enemies with a grace born of relentless training and hardened by countless battles. She was a legend to her people, a living storm that carved her will into the galaxy. But even legends fall. As the battle raged, Revan stood on the edge of that chaos, a figure both resolute and haunted. His eyes scanned the devastation, his mind weighing the cost of war. When he saw her fall, he did not see victory. He saw the weight of a symbol, the helmet that had carried her through war and death. When Revan knelt and lifted the battered helmet from the dirt, he felt its weight, heavier than steel, heavier than blood. The scratches and dents whispered stories of fights long past. The faded crimson paint bore the scars of battle and loss. In that moment, Revan was not just a warrior claiming a prize. He was taking up a mantle, a burden he did not yet fully understand. Mandalorian elders would later say, "The helmet is not merely worn, it is inhabited. It carries the spirit of its bearer and the echoes of those who came before. To take it is to take a soul." Among the clans, this act was viewed as a wound too deep to heal. They mourned not just a fallen warrior, but a legacy stolen. Some whispered of ancient curses. Others swore vengeance in the name of honor. Revan's followers, however, saw a different truth. To them, the helmet was a beacon, a symbol of rebellion and unyielding will. It erased the man beneath and forged a myth that transcended names and faces. Revan himself was torn, part reverence, part ruthless pragmatism. He knew the weight he carried was not just physical, it was spiritual, cultural, political. As he fastened the helmet, the cold metal pressed against his skin, a reminder that power comes with sacrifice. It concealed his face, but revealed his intent. The mask was no longer just armor, it was a statement. It declared a new kind of war. The soldiers who fought under Revan's banner whispered among themselves. Some revered the helmet's mystique, others feared the darkness it seemed to summon. To enemies, it was a harbinger of destruction, the visage of a man who had crossed the line between light and shadow. And so, the mask of a Mandalorian warlord became the mask of Revan, a bridge between cultures, a symbol of defiance, and a legend born of steel and shadow. The taking of the helmet was a turning point, not just in battle, but in myth. When Revan lifted it from the ashes of Cathar, it was more than an act of defiance. It was a choice to carry not just armor, but meaning. That helmet had belonged to a warrior whose story ended in silence. Revan gave it a new voice. At first, it was a symbol of resistance, a silent banner for those who had lost faith in the Jedi. To the soldiers who followed him, it meant leadership. To the Outer Rim, it meant justice. It wasn't just steel anymore. It was a story, one that burned through the war and lit a path through the dark. But stories shift, and symbols, they bend. The same helmet that gave hope to the broken would soon strike fear into the hearts of worlds. Because Revan changed, the war changed him. And whether he fell into darkness or was simply swallowed by it, the man who returned from the unknown regions was not the one who had claimed that helm, and with him the mask changed too. What once rallied armies now silenced planets. What once defied tyranny became its face. That same scarred Mandalorian helmet, now worn by a Sith Lord, would become one of the most feared sights in the galaxy, a symbol of victory reshaped into a mask of terror. Chapter 2: The Shadow in the Steel. It's one thing to wear a mask, it's another to become it. After the Mandalorian Wars, the galaxy expected peace. What it got was silence. Revan vanished. The Republic called him a hero and then quietly a deserter. The Jedi refused to speak his name in the halls of the temple. His soldiers were disbanded, reassigned, or simply forgotten. But legends like his don't disappear. They wait. And when Revan returned, he came not with a salute, but with a fleet. Sleek black ships, crimson lights, voices chanting words not heard since the days of the old Sith Empire. He no longer spoke for the Republic. He did not return as a Jedi. He returned as a shadow. The helmet, the one he had once worn as a symbol of rebellion, was now fused to a new purpose. Revan had become Darth Revan, and with that change, the meaning of the mask transformed. Before, it stood for choice, for justice. Now it was fear made visible. It wasn't that the helmet itself had changed. The crimson paint was still there. The battle scars remained, but the intention behind it had curdled. On one outer rim world, survivors described seeing only the helmet, hovering through the smoke, a red glow shining through it, silent and steady before everything around them fell. That was the new symbol, cold, efficient, final. Revan didn't need to shout. He didn't need propaganda, just the image, the mask. The galaxy began to tremble at its appearance. Civilians ran at the sight of it. Generals refused to engage fleets that bore its mark. Jedi Masters who had once fought beside Revan hesitated, paralyzed by grief, by failure, by guilt. They remembered what the helmet had meant, and now, what it meant they had allowed to happen. Sith cultists and dark side fanatics, meanwhile, revered it. They painted their armor to mimic its crimson design. They carved it into temple walls. They whispered stories of how Revan did not wear the helmet, but how the helmet had chosen him. Some even claimed it was more than Beskar, that it was a totem of dark power, a relic forged by war and fueled by betrayal. But the truth is more haunting. It was just a mask. It had always been just a mask. They say when a warrior falls, the armor outlives the soul. Revan's fall wasn't sudden. It was slow, deliberate, like a fire that eats through stone, quiet at first, until the walls collapse. The helmet never flinched, never cracked. It simply watched. And when the galaxy finally rose to stop him, it wasn't just a Jedi they faced. It was an idea, shaped in war, tempered in betrayal, and sealed behind a face of iron. But even legends like Revan don't last forever. What comes next is what remained. Chapter 3: The Fall and the Legacy. Every legend ends, but not all of them die. Darth Revan was never defeated in the way people hoped. No grand clash in the heart of the galaxy. No triumphant Jedi standing tall over a fallen tyrant. His fall was slower, stranger. It began from within. The man who had once lifted a helmet in defiance, who had stood against the Jedi Council and broken the Mandalorian war machine, began to fracture under the weight of the very empire he'd built. Power never came without cost, and Revan had paid in pieces. First, he turned on his own mentors, then on the Jedi, then on himself. Records from that time are fragmented, intentionally erased, but fragments survive. There are whispers that he sought ancient knowledge, Sith teachings older than the Republic itself, holocrons laced with madness, voices that whispered through stone and shadow. Revan, the tactician, the warrior, began to transform into something else. His fleet grew more brutal, his officers more afraid. Entire planets were turned into graveyards simply to make a point. The man who had once fought for the innocent now saw entire populations as leverage, as pawns. Even those closest to him began to drift. His apprentice, trained in secret, shaped in fear, began preparing for the day she might have to replace him, not through inheritance, through betrayal. In the final year of his campaign, Revan stopped speaking to his commanders directly. Orders were given through encrypted transmissions. When he did appear, he said little. The helmet remained always in place. It was no longer a tool, it was a wall. Some believe he was hiding a wound, others a secret. But those who saw him up close said the same thing. His presence had changed. It was colder, sharper, less human. The same visor that had once looked out in defiance now looked through people, past them, as if Revan wasn't seeing the galaxy anymore, just the shadows behind it. The Sith call it ascension. The Jedi call it corruption. But either way, the man inside the mask was unraveling. And then it ended. Not with a blaze of glory, but with a silence that spread across the stars like an eclipse. His fleet shattered at Malachor. His apprentice rose in his place. And Revan disappeared. Whether slain, redeemed, or exiled, no one could say. What remained, more than any body, more than any holocron or weapon, was the legend and the image. That crimson helmet, scorched and shadowed, the last face many worlds would ever see. Jedi Masters would later debate his legacy. Some claimed the helmet was cursed, that wearing it sealed his fate. Others said it merely gave him permission to become the version of himself he had always feared. What's clear is this: the fall of Revan wasn't just a personal collapse. It echoed outward. It changed how the Jedi saw their role in the galaxy. It forced the Republic to confront its own hypocrisy, and it proved, perhaps more than anything, that even the greatest heroes can become the galaxy's sharpest blades. The armor never changed, but the spirit inside it broke, and that's the legacy. Not just power, not just war, but the danger of belief without restraint. The helmet became a monument to that warning. Not because it was evil, but because it outlasted the man who once gave it meaning. He burned so brightly that even his shadow left scars. The galaxy moved on, but the mask of Revan, the faceless face of both savior and tyrant, still lingers in the silence between stars. In stories, in symbols, in memory, not as a relic, as a reminder. The mask is gone. The man behind it vanished into myth. But legends don't die. They linger, in ruins, in whispers, in the places we're told not to look. The fall of Darth Revan was not the end of his story, because something remains, something forged in war, wrapped in mystery, and worn by the one who defied both Jedi and Sith. A helmet, a myth, a ghost, and some say it's still out there, waiting to be found. Chapter 4. The Hunt for the Mask. When Revan passed, he left no grave, no ashes, no tomb, only silence. Some believe he became one with the Force, not fallen, not banished, just gone. But he left something behind: his gear, his blades, and the mask. The last pieces of a war-torn legend still echoing through the dark. This is where the Kybercron begins to break. The entries fracture. The visions blur. What comes next is seen not in clear truth, but in shadow, like half-remembered dreams scorched into forgotten stone. I will do my best to interpret what remains, but understand, what we are about to uncover is not history, it's warning. After Revan vanished, the temple he last touched, the ancient one deep within the jungles of Yavin 4, was left undisturbed. A place so heavy with death and memory, even the Jedi would not approach it, nor the Sith, because what lingered inside was not just the residue of a fallen warlord. It was the ghost of something older, something hungry. Naga Sadow, one of the original Sith Lords, whose experiments in alchemy and immortality had twisted the temple into a wound in the Force. For centuries, no one dared to enter. But time breeds ambition, and ambition calls to the dark. Sith cultists, drawn by tales of Revan's helmet, driven by the belief that they could wield his power, returned to the temple of the Massassi. They believed they were honoring him, but they misunderstood the story. They did not know of his redemption. They saw only the warlord, the destroyer, the conqueror, and so they worshipped the mask, not as a relic, but as a god. The Revanites were reborn in blood and blindness, performing ancient rites, drawing Sith sigils across the stones, calling on Revan to return. But their rituals stirred more than they understood. The power they summoned didn't come from their fallen idol. It came from beneath, from a rage that had slept too long. The spirit of Naga Sadow awoke, and he was not pleased. To him, Revan was a pretender, a thief. And these cultists, playing priest to a false deity, were an insult. The Force screamed as his wrath broke loose. The temple walls bled red. The air choked with the scent of fire and rot. He slaughtered them, all but one. A man shattered in body, missing an arm, a leg, crawling through the jungle with nothing but breath and madness. And it was that broken thing that Sadow chose to keep, not out of mercy, but purpose. Using the dark side, Sadow dominated his mind, filling it with visions, scripts, whispers. The last survivor became a living vessel, a prophet of lies and myth, and wherever he wandered he spoke not of Sadow, but of Revan, spreading the legend, feeding the flame, so that one day, someone strong enough, curious enough, desperate enough, would come seeking the mask, and when they did, Sadow would be waiting, not to offer answers, but to claim a body. The story of Revan's mask may be lost to time, or waiting to be found. But one thing's certain: the Force remembers. Which Kybercron should we unlock next? Leave your thoughts in the databank below. And if you seek more stories from the galaxy far, far away, subscribe to KyberForged. The archive is always growing, and the Force is always watching.